my friends, are just in time to take a shift, a revolutionary podcast hosted weekly by yours truly, Belinda and Catherine, that will literally alter the trajectory of your life.
We're on a mission to listen, ignite, and transform, challenging ourselves and you, dear listener, to journey deeper and get uncomfortable. Discover what lies beyond those layers of fear, judgment, smallness, and everything else that's been getting in your way up until now. Choose to step into new possibilities and courageously wake up to the life you know you were meant to be living.
So buckle up, Buttercup, summon your curiosity, and together, let's take a shift. Hello, lovely listeners. We are back together. Hello, my love.
Hi.
I so enjoyed last week's. I missed you, but I so enjoyed listening to our podcast and it not being mean and not hearing my hickey voice and not hearing me make 6 syllables out of one word. And it was so good, and I so enjoyed it. And thank you for doing that. And I just so enjoyed that in the moment, because I think just breathing and just being and is exactly what we all need. I know I needed it. So thank you for doing that. It was just amazing. But today we're going to talk about Something's Gotta Give. And you came up with that title yesterday while we were talking, and talk a little bit about that with me. Something's gotta give.
I mean, I think we're just, everything is framed in the context of COVID-19 these days. And I don't know, I think when I think about that idea right now, it's sort of like this pressure cooker, like we're all in this pressure cooker. And I think some days it feels like a pressure cooker of love in my house, and some days it feels like a pressure cooker of something else. And, certainly all the stories that you've been sharing with me at your hospital, and I'm just, we're all just filled sort of to the brim with our thoughts and our feelings about what's going on. And it's like, we can't escape them. I think, even with Netflix, and thank God for Netflix, we love Netflix. We don't have enough distractions right now to distract ourselves, which I think is great. I think it's great because we're sitting with a lot of stuff. And at the same time, it's like, what do we do when it just feels like it's too much, And I think a lot of us are having to figure out different strategies and different ways to navigate this, because we're in Portland, we're in the middle of week 3. The kids are doing online school. I mean, we've taken it really seriously. And I, from what I understand, I think we're doing pretty good as a city. And, I was out on a walk yesterday and saw a lot more people outside too. And I was thinking, oh gosh, is it just going to be that people start sort of not taking this seriously at some point because they just got to get out of their houses? And I don't know, so every day it feels like having all kinds of thoughts, right? Of like, we can do this for another 3 months. And then the same day or the same minute, I'll have another thought of like, I can't do this another freaking day. What's upside down? What's upside right? Like, where are we?
That's the truth. And this means something so different to me. Something's got to give. And I come home from work. The only place I go is I go to work, I come home, and then if I have to get gas, I glove up, go to the gas station, and then detox from getting gas, and I come home. I may do I won't go into a grocery store. I do pickup, or I have home delivery. And then everything that comes into my house is sprayed with alcohol. Like, it's just at a level I've never, ever experienced it, even as a healthcare professional, of course. And, taking care of these patients and taking care of patients not known, because sometimes they're not known and then they come positive and you've taken care of them. You still have your mask on, but not an N95 mask. I get one mask for the day, like a lot of healthcare professionals in this world do. And then if you get a known, you're in an N95. But it's all around you. It doesn't matter if I'm in the hospital or if I'm in the grocery store or whatever. If I forget to put my glove on at a gas station or put my card in my car, I mean, it doesn't matter. I don't know. It just doesn't matter. And so the thing, I've really been angry and angry. I've had anger over it. I've had so much sadness, so much frustration, like every low emotion you could ever think. Despair, feelings of we're going to die, I'm going to die, I'm not done, I want to live. So I've had, like everybody else, right? Like you have decided, I've done my will, I've done my durable power of attorney. That's surreal when you're doing that in this moment. And something's got to give, because I cannot stay in that mode of all the dying that goes on around me, in the sense of the US, whether it be, whatever it is, like the number. Some days I don't even look at the numbers. Sometimes I try not to look at the numbers because I just can't. Like I see what I see with my own eyes. Those are big enough for me. That's enough evidence for me. And something's got to give. Like, no matter, we step up as healthcare workers, from the housekeepers to the techs to the docs to the CRNAs to the nurses, respiratory therapists, our administrator. I mean, we're all in that hospital, right? We're all in that together. Every minute we're working, we're at a more higher exposure rate, supposedly, because it's more concentrated. But I'm at the point now, I've got to choose life. I've got to choose an entire mentality of living. Like, I've had to cancel the wedding. I've moved it to next May. We moved it to next May the 9th. So many things have canceled, and that's okay, because what that does for me has really given me hope and the carrot of what's going to go on when this is over. And I have to, like, when you said something's got to give, I was like, yes, that's it. Like, I have to, and it is a muscle that I am using that has not been used really in my existence almost every minute. Or if not, I'm going to slide down that slippery slope to where, and it still happens, whether I'm at work or whether I'm at home, you'll slide down that slippery slope of, I know we're all going to die, but I don't want to die tomorrow. I don't want to die next week. We go down that slippery slope. So when you said something's got to give, and I know I'm rambling, but I was like, yes, that's it. I have to choose life. I have to start seeing life. I have to start seeing living beyond COVID-19. Like, I have to get my vision beyond COVID-19. And that's a stretch, because I walk into COVID-19 every day. We all do, right? I get out of the house. I'm not, but then I go to work, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to be there and to serve and to take care of all of our patients. And yet I don't want to live in that moment. I want to live in beyond COVID-19, because that's life. And then the conundrum there, does that mean I'm not living in the moment? Right? Like, you know what I mean there? Like, it just came to me like that. If I live beyond COVID-19, maybe I'm not learning what I need to in the moment.
Well, it's really funny, because how that felt very like resonant to me was this conundrum of, from the time I was like in my 20s, this idea of having a 1-year plan or 5-year plan or 10-year plan, sort of like that direction that I'd be heading in, and then stepping it back. Like, if I have a vision of what I want my life to be 5 years from now, how I want to be living, I step it back, which then helps me know what steps to do today. And at the same time, I got feedback of like, are you really present, Belinda? Because you're always thinking about the future. And I would say, well, actually, I don't see it that way. It's not that I'm not being present. It's that by taking some time in this moment to imagine what's possible, then allows me to sort of set the trajectory. So to me, as you're sharing, it feels like if you choose your focus to be life, and you choose your 1-year plan to be, I've got this beautiful 1-year plan or 5 or 10 or 50-year plan to be living into. Well, in order for me to be around a year from now or 50 years from now, what am I doing today to, right? And today, and we've talked about this in other podcasts, our thoughts create our reality. What we focus on increases. If we're home, whether we're in the hospital or whether we're at home, thinking thoughts about death all day and focusing in that direction, then that takes us more toward that direction. If we're focusing on life, you may be around death right now. You may be around all this fear and worry, but I think it's more this question of, how do I choose life in this moment? Right? Do I give a smile? Do I share some emotion with my eyes down the corridor? Do I say a nice word to someone passing by? Do I encourage someone who is losing it in the hallway, or do I sit and lose it with them? Like, to me, it's not about focusing on, well, one day I'll be happy when I'm getting married in Hawaii a year from now. And so I'm just going to manage through today. It's more like, let me have these reminders. Let me have these happier times, or these goals and these dreams that I want to accomplish. In order to get there, there's something to be lived, and lived well now, even in the most horrible of circumstances. Does that make sense?
Of course it makes sense. It's like a blueprint. A blueprint is not a house that we can live in, but it is a blueprint of what we're building for the future. So if we didn't have this kind of focus, we would never have homes to live in, because we would never think about what's going to come down the pike for tomorrow. I see the blueprint of it today. Tomorrow it'll be built into a home. I see the blueprint in the midst of the impossible. I see the blueprint, right? I see the vision in the moment of what feels impossible, right? Like, let's see, what was it? Somebody said to me, oh, I was I was looking on the website for a Love Sack cover. Like, I have this big, it's called Love Sack. It's a big store, and it's like this big giant bean bag without the beans. It's got this kind of foam in it, and I wanted a different cover on it. So I was looking for covers, and somebody walked by me and they said, I was at lunch and I was on the computer and I was just looking to see what colors they had, and somebody goes, Kathy, only you would look for a new Love Sack cover, to design a room around in the middle of COVID-19. And it really caught me off guard, because it was so normal for me to think, oh, I need a different Love Sack cover because I don't like that color anymore, and I need to do it to go to that room better. And I thought, well, why is that weird? And I was like, and I really dissected that, right? I really was like, well, I think that's just fun. I think that's me showing that I'm going to be around for a while to enjoy a new cover. And I even wrote the company and asked for swatches so that they could mail me swatches. So it's just funny. But, I'm going to equate this to building a house. The blueprint for tomorrow is founded in the thoughts of today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Abraham calls it launching the rocket of desire. Mm-hmm. I want to live. Like, every part of me wants to live, because I'm not done. I would love to see Caroline, but I don't want to see her this soon, right? Like, every part of me wants to live. I want to see a sunrise. I want to see a beach. I want to hear a bird sing. Like yesterday, I was just in the house and I was listening. I didn't turn anything on, and I just wanted to hear all the sounds around me. I wanted to see, was that a bird, or what is that? Is that a crow? What kind of bird is that? I've never done that before. I'm doing things I've never found myself doing. And I really like it in the midst of this. And then I went down the rabbit hole of fear and death, and just got angry, and I got sad, and I got frustrated. And then that's when I talked to you, when we had that conversation and all those texts. And then today was a better day. And I think everybody's ebbing and flowing with that. I see that at the hospital. I see that with my friends as I talk to them and we text, and as you and I share our days. But the thing that has to give is that we talked about this on a podcast. We have to keep choosing. And in this moment, we have to keep choosing life. We have to keep choosing living in the midst of what we're seeing, what we're hearing about, and then in the midst of what we're experiencing. We have to choose life. You know, I, a lot of people bought a lot of toilet paper and a lot of food. And part of me is like, who hoards all that? And a part of me wants to say, well, they think they're going to be living in their houses a long, long time, and that's called living, and I'm okay with that. You know, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's how I've not that we should be hoarding, because we have enough supplies. But I'm like, they're choosing living. They're choosing to say, I'm going to be living through this, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's at least positive to me. I don't care how many rolls of toilet paper you have. I mean, we need to leave some for everybody else, but just in the sense and the framework of choosing life, because we're always going to be, I love life, I fear death, in the sense of the human experience. From a spiritual perspective, I don't fear it. From a human experience, I fear that. I fear death because it means I can't have my experiences with the people I love, with nature, to see where I go, where I'm at in my 60s or 70s or 80s. So as a human, I fear death. Not the act of it, it's just about not being around.
Well, of course. And I think that's, next to public speaking, death comes second, right? I think is
Right.
what they say.
Right.
And I think in this something's got to give context. There's something about letting go of resistance to what's happening. Meaning, I know I've had a lot of calls in the last couple of weeks, and families are, not every family is successfully navigating this. You're seeing it in the hospital with abuse cases of, difficult family situations that are only more difficult by the confinement. I'm seeing it in blended family situations where one parent doesn't want to bring the kids to the other parent's house for their normal parenting plan time. And this word surrender just keeps coming up for me time and time again. I'm literally using it with clients, like surrender, whether it's, a fight about who's going to drop off the kid this week because it's just a metaphor for something bigger that they've been struggling with and haven't resolved. uh, whether it's the fear, like surrendering and let yourself feel the fear, but then you're going to go feel something else, right? Like not sitting in it, kind of half feeling it, avoiding it, and then, right, like feel it, but surrendering into also the opportunity that I think we all have. And that's whether we're at home with kids or when you're in the hospital or every experience that everyone's having. We do have the ability in these moments. And I can't help but again think of Edith Eger and her book, The Choice. And she represents to me this message of, in the most dire of experiences, that's when we know who we really are, what we're really made of. And to me, the surrender is like to get in touch with that, to really know what are we really made of, and to give ourselves the opportunity to see that, even just a glimpse of it. I think something's got to give. It's this resistance and this sort of hardness and stuckness, I think, that many of us have, whether it's in our routines, whether it's what we think we've been right about or what we're defending about ourselves. It's the things that we think we need when we haven't even really sat down to really think about it, to allow the spaciousness that has been presented to us, even in uncomfortable situations, families that don't have money to pay their bills right now, or families that have to send somebody to the hospital because they work in healthcare. I don't know. Surrender for me it just keeps washing over me like every morning with my shower.
Well, I love that in the sense of, you know, I truly believe in my heart of hearts this is a humanity reset. Like, we have never experienced anything like this in our existence, right? Like, we've just never experienced anything like this. And prayerfully, we won't experience anything like this again, I say, from a very selfish point of view. Um, and we really are getting a sense of how vulnerable we are to something we can't see, the virus, as a human. And what's being uncovered is all of the emotions that come with that vulnerability, because as a human race, as Americans, we don't usually feel very vulnerable. That's not how we're trained to 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 be, right? Because how can you be great if you're vulnerable? I mean, let's talk about Brene Brown, because we know in our vulnerability there's our great strength. Like that's the metaphor, right? Like you and I both know that from a spiritual perspective. And now, as a human perspective, we have this virus that we can't see, but somewhere it invades us, and we're so vulnerable to even unto death from the human experience. And as the emotions come in, we're so vulnerable because we're resisting fear, we're resisting the thought of death, we're resisting everything that we work so hard, all of those helium balloons of fear, death, loss, like having to deal with grief, out of control. People don't like, that's why people don't like anesthesia, because they're quote unquote out of control. Anytime I ask, well, why are you scared of anesthesia? Because I'm not in control of it, right? So none of us are in control of this. And the irony, Course in Miracles, we're not in control of anything ever. So the vulnerability from the emotional part is really what's like plastered in our freaking faces right now, as we isolate, as we work through this. I think the survival rate of us as humans will be in our thought process of either I'm going to die or I'm going to live, and I need to make that choice now, because we're not. I don't even think we're at the midway point yet here in America. I really do not. I think we're weeks, maybe 3 weeks away from that, maybe a month. I, and that's just what I feel. That's what I intuit. Like I said, I don't look at the numbers all the time, but I see what I see when I go to work. When I hear from other healthcare providers, that's just what I feel. And I think that the thing that has to give right now is our thought process and how we're choosing to live or die. And I also think it is exactly what you said in the surrender. And you know how Phyllis taught when we did that session with Phyllis a month ago now, maybe, where Phyllis really taught me how to take the feelings, especially a healthcare worker, take the feelings that I was feeling. Let's just say it's fear of death, and like go into a meditation about that, and then really allow the feeling and the fear of death to come into me, and go, breathe in the feeling of fear of dying and death around me, and the feeling of all of this loss. And then she taught me how to really like come into having compassion for myself, right? Like having that self compassion and just talking myself through that. Well, I understand how you feel, because I mean, it was like a conversation, and understand how you feel, and just apply the salve of love, self-love, first of all, because I'm the one having to deal with my own thoughts and feelings about that. And then I was able to apply it to the people I work with, to my health, to my hospital, to my friends. Then I was apply it like we did at USM when we would do those meditations, where we would send it out to the state we lived in, we would send it out to the country we lived in, and we send it out to the country and the world that we lived in. And like just getting a hold of that has really helped me in the surrender aspect, because like I would bring it in, like I think along the way we're told we're not supposed to feel these things because they can be detrimental to us. But like in the surrendering and being able to feel them and let them pass through us, I think that's where our strength really is. And I think that's where the something has to give. That's what lit me up yesterday when you just made that comment. And I was like, that's it. That's what we need to talk about, in the sense of surrendering to our vulnerability, which we are being required to with this virus on a human level, and then learning how to do that at an emotional and spiritual level.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the healing is.
Yeah, and like we learned at USM, our emotions and our feelings are that doorway to our desires. So it's literally like, if we're stopping ourselves from feeling what we're feeling in the moment, if we don't allow ourselves to pause and have that, then how, to me, it's almost like, how could I know even why I want to be living if I don't even allow myself to feel what I'm feeling? Because isn't that living? Isn't that is in the physical world reality what we're experiencing? A lot of it is our feeling, right? Our feelings, our thoughts. If we're not, if we're actually stopping ourselves from having those emotions and having those feelings, we're stifling our life energy. We're stifling our experience here. And then we're also not allowing us to take the step that happens after, which is, I think, once we fully experience our emotions and we fully experience our feeling, which only takes a few minutes, I think, somewhere we reference that whoever said a feeling or emotion is only like 90 seconds or something like that. Then on the other side of it, we can ask that question, now what? Or what do I want? Or what's next? But when we stop it all the time, we can't make prefrontal cortex conscious, intentional choices from a place of true knowing. We're all the time kind of in reaction mode then, because we don't know what we want, and we don't know what we feel, and we don't know which way we're going. And I think, to me, that when we talk about this great reset, I thought, I have a really good life. I have thought for a long time I have a really good life. And I have all the kinds of issues that just general people have, whether it's a relationship issue with my husband, or feeling like I don't have enough of my own time because I've got kids that I'm raising, or whatever. Before all of this, I would say I had a really good life, and I was one of these people who was always reevaluating to sort of see how it could even be better, right? Like, that's just me. Been doing that my whole entire adult life. And sometimes it's looked like a simple dissatisfaction with what I was living, and frustration and kind of feeling stuck. But most of the time it's been a proactive, intentional way of like, this is great, and I did this, and now what, right? Like, and through this period of time, I feel like there's something different that's shifting in me, that's really asking, when you're faced against that question that I will ask myself and other people sometimes, what if you had a year to live? What would you do with that life? And oftentimes, what people say that they would do with that life is very different than what they're doing with that life, including myself when asking myself that question. And I feel like for those of us who do have the luxury to be sitting and contemplating life right now, I think there is an invitation to be thinking about our lives in a way that's even more profound and more honest and more exciting than we thought before. Because I think, at least for me, even the questions I've asked up until now, I'm trying to challenge myself during this time to get to know myself even better than I thought, after all these years of self-help work and working on myself, but still not necessarily touching into like, what is core to me. Like, if it was just one thing, if I was just going to be doing one thing the rest of my life, if I could only live one place or see one person. I mean, life has been reduced to a very small set of things that we're interacting with today, right? People we're interacting with, and activities we're interacting with, and all of this. And I don't have the answers right now. They'll come in time, but I think that I just share this because I think, if we're in a global reset, if this really is a time for all of humanity to be coming together, it's like, I don't know many cultures on the planet. I've traveled a ton, but there's lots of places I haven't been. So it would be presumptuous of me to say how people live in one place versus another, because I don't know what's happening on the planet. But I just wonder if there was one thing for, 7.5 billion people on the planet to be resetting about. There's something about this, the expansion. You talk about the soul is here to expand. There's something about us universally coming together to have an understanding of why we're all here, not just each of us individually, but what is it that we're all here to understand. And then this reset, if we could connect on something, maybe it's love, maybe it's soul expansion, I don't know. But I think it's the work for each of us now to be considering this thought. And I think that's a very exciting inquiry.
Yeah. I mean, just in you speaking that, like, I just noticed myself breathing so easily, right? Like, just being, yes, yes. Like, I'm just saying, yes, 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 that. Give me more of that. That's exactly, and when I come home in the evening, because it's light out now, of course, I see neighbors sitting in their driveways in their chairs, like talking to each other from the ends of their driveways across, right? And everybody waves. And it's so endearing to come home and see that. It just almost makes me cry because, like, we are finding, and there's so much creativity going on Facebook, right? Like, we're having like concerts from musicians, and we are having creativity like no other. And yes, thank God for Netflix. It doesn't even ask us if we're still there. It knows we're always there. Because somebody told me they took that off, like in the last week. Because I'm like, why does it keep asking if I'm there? I'm there. And so it's just there's so much humor going on too, like even in the face of this. And sometimes I stop and I think, can I be humorous? Because I do. Yes, I can. And here's the thing:
Yes.
every time there is a death, every time there has been a death with me in healthcare, whether a baby didn't make it or there was a death in the unit or whatever there was, we respond to codes and go to codes and the patient does it. Whatever it is, when I see that a patient has, or learn if a patient has died, I know that was perfectly planned by spirit, right? Like, God knows our days. God knows the time of our death. And so, even with the number of deaths that are going on around this world, I really believe that was soul's journey. And luckily, I'm there in the hospital with patients that are living and dying. And I know we're saying they're dying alone without their family. And yes, they are, but we're still holding their hands.
Yeah.
We're still, there's a human, it's not like they're in a room by themselves. I mean, I'm sure there are some, but for the most part, we still are human beings loving these patients through this.
Mm-hmm.
And if there is death, not just from COVID, but we're still having heart attacks, we're still having trauma on the highway from people that are having to drive to work, or truck drivers. We're still having life that's going on. Thank goodness it's not going on at the pace that it has been, because there is isolation. We're still having deaths. Like, people are having massive heart attacks, people are having strokes. It's not even COVID related. And so we see that, and I have to I've learned how to compartmentalize all of these numbers in the COVID death, as I have to say, that is divine too. Like, there's not one blade of grass out of order in this universe. And if it becomes my divinity to die through this, that's okay too. Because, where I'm going is a lot better than where I'm at. And that's really hard to say, because I think where I'm at's pretty dang great, right? Like, I love to see the sun come up or a sunset, and what I do in my life. Like, there'd be no regrets in my life. Would I wish I'd have done some things differently? Sure. But if if there was one thing and it made me not where I was and who I was today, I wouldn't trade it. So that's pretty incredible. And at the same time, if I did die next month, next 2 months, I want to have lived in the 2 months I've got left. And that's where something has to give, because we really don't know, even with COVID-19, we don't know our expiration day or date. And I just want to choose living, even in the midst of this exponential dying and disease process like we've never seen in our lifetime. And I still want to choose living. Like I choose living every day. But even in the face of this, I want to get really good at saying yes to life until the moment I can't breathe and say yes to life. I mean, even going out, I'm going to say yes to life, right? Like, so I have to, like, I'm really amping that up within me, even, working in the midst of where I work. I'm really going to amp that up. Like, I'm going to be that life force that comes in and pervades that dark space. Like, that's who I am, right? That's who I'm going to be. So I have to get really amped, like, and I can feel it. Like, my face is hot because I can feel that yes, 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 that lean into life, that something's got to give, and I'm giving it to the living. Because you are either thinking one or two things. You are in fear or you are in love and life. There is no way to have more than one thought perusing through your brain at one time. Oh, okay, girl. I mean, that's just it. That is surrendering to the fear.
Yes, and
that is surrendering.
Absolutely. And I think
life in that. No, there's so much life in that. When you talk about surrendering, there's so much resistance to dying that you can't live in the midst of that. And if you surrender into that fear and that the thought of death, it's where you really become alive. It's such a, I mean, it's so crazy to think of, but that's, Brene Brown teaches us that in the midst of our vulnerability is where our truest and most authentic strength will lie.
Yes. And I think it's the moment for each of us to be asking ourselves, what does that look like? What does saying yes to life look like? And how have we each in our own ways been saying no? Really? That's a very personal question, but I don't think we would have to do very much digging to, and we touched on this, I think, in the last couple of podcasts, to point out ways in which we as a society, in particular American society, are saying no to life. A society that says yes to life does not have the opioid addiction crisis. A society that says yes to life does not have hundreds of thousands of homeless, millions of children without food. A society that says yes to life doesn't have the obesity epidemic, doesn't have the adult onset diabetes epidemic. I mean, there's so many epidemics that we've been talking about, and I don't know how much we were doing about it, again, as a society before this one showed up.
We had normalized those. I normalized the obesity epidemic, right? I normalized that in my own life.
Well, and here's the thing, we're each individually having our experience, and then there's a society having an experience. And I think part of what has been really challenging is that we haven't, as an American society, again, and not to get political, but this whole idea of socialism that people get so scared about, having lived in Europe, having lived in quote unquote socialist countries, the only thing that I see that is different in those countries than in the US is a consideration for the greater whole as opposed to the individual. And I think that when we are, again, talking about global, we've got this global epidemic. We are thinking as a world right now, as opposed to an individual society, an individual household. And I think, to me, choosing life also doesn't mean just choosing life for ourselves. Like, what does that look like for ourselves? What does it look like for our world, right? For our society? If we don't have some form of nationalized healthcare after this, then I just say, like, forget it. I'm just going to throw up my hands, because there's, we're having the crisis that we're having in great part because we still don't have the resources available to be working with millions of people. And you know what I mean? Like, there's something that it feels to me like the way that this whole process is even unfolding in the US compared to other countries is because part of what we've been saying no to in life is being responsible for each other, having a sense that we're responsible on a greater level for each other, that we're connected. And we've talked a lot about that, I think, in these podcasts. We are connected beyond what we can see and feel with each other. And you cry. I cry every night at 7:00. My city of Portland, everybody's coming out and clapping for first responders, just like they're doing in Paris and Brussels and in Italy and all places around the world. And I cry. You know why I cry? Because of that connection. And I think when you see those people sitting at the end of the driveways, it's because of the connection. There's like a connection that's coming forward in this profound way. But this is actually, I think, the thing that wasn't working before. I think all these epidemics, all of these societal ills were happening because we didn't see ourselves as a collective. And we're starting to see ourselves as a collective. And it is profound, like,
Well,
to the depths, right?
remember, and what's coming forward for me is how we had talked about, the first thing you get kissed on the cheek by a butterfly to try to get your attention, and the second time you get I forget how we talked about that on that podcast. You get slapped in the face, or you get a 2x4 over the forehead, and the third one's a train getting ready, right, to get your attention, getting ready to run over you. And we found the train.
This is
collectively.
Yeah.
Collectively. And when I was doing some writing the other day for my book, and I had written that, we're now, like in the 90s when I was in the business world, it was the spirit of competition, right? Like, it was such the spirit of competition. And now we're coming into what I just have the sense of the spirit of cooperation, and taking that even further into the spirit of connection, right? Like, there's this cooperation, and even greater than that is that spirit that we are all connected. And we know that this is, I know in my heart, my spirit in my heart, that this is all for that, right? Like, I get that. It just is, it's just a very interesting time to be alive right now, and to see what's going to come out of this, and to be alive to witness that.
Yes.
And that aspect of where we go from here. Yes. And how will we be, and how will we react? When I see somebody act like an ass fucking hole, like, because you're getting your temperature taken going into work, I just want to go, you're probably the part of the reason we have COVID. I mean, I just get so reactive, and of course that's judgmental, but we're all at a breaking point here. Like, we only have so much capacity, and for someone to rise up and just to be what it's always been here in the form of an asshole, that I'm like,
compassion.
Right. But I'm like, in the middle of this, you're acting like that and utilizing all this energy we're just taking your temp. It takes 4 seconds.
Yes.
Right? It takes 4 seconds. Can't you see the bigger picture here? They're trying to protect you.
Yes. And Catherine, this is the practice. This is the practice. This is the practice. Compassion in the face of that person behaving
because
in that way.
Exactly. And because they're acting out of fear. Yeah. Because you're right. You're exactly right. Like, I need to be more loving to that asswipe that's giving that, because a lot of times at our hospital, it's the nurses that are doing it. to that person, because maybe they're scared they get 104, 103, 102 temp and they're turned away. Then they got to deal with, oh my gosh, I've got a temp. I probably have the disease, right? So they're acting out of fear. And you're right. I'm judging them. And I would probably be so fearful too if I got a temp, knowing what could come down the pike with it, even though it's pollen season, right? Mm-hmm. Even though we all get sick with pollen, right? So you're right. It's just that's a great reminder for me, taking a shift on calling somebody an ass wipe, just because somebody wants to spend 4 seconds taking their temp. It's not the temp. It's the scare, probably the fear. They're going to be told, guess what? You can't come to work today.
That's it. And something's got to give. And maybe it's as simple as we've got to surrender to the fear so we can let go and move through it so that we can reach the love.
And surrender to the love. That's exactly what I was going to say. Exactly. Could we just do a billboard on that, please? Say it again.
So the somethings that's got to give is surrendering to the fear so we can feel it, move through it, let it go, and reach the love.
Whew. Okay. I'm going to sit. I just love that.
I love you.
Well, I love you too greatly, and I've missed you. And if you want to find more about Take a Shift, www.takeashiftnow.com is our website where you can get in touch with us. And we love hearing from you. We would love to hear from more of you about what's going on your part of the planet. Not everybody on here is from the United States, so we would love to hear from different parts of the country where we're at as well.
The
world, exactly. And until next time.
Love you. Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening to this episode of Take a Shift, a part of Mental Health News Radio Network. We are so grateful for your time and presence. Always remember, you're just one shift away from a better feeling day in your life. Until next time, remember to listen, ignite, and transform. Much love from us to you.